Nora and Alec cruising through the serene countryside on an endless road. Nora, feeling the need to use the restroom, inquiries about the time it will take to reach their destination. Alec estimates a couple of hours and apologizes for the unexpectedly long journey. When Nora asks about the next rest stop, Alec admits uncertainty. Although Nora needs to relieve herself, she declines Alec's offer to pull over now, opting to wait for the next rest stop. They get to a rest stop that seems empty and is far from anywhere. Stopping in front of the building, they knock, but no one answers. Nora decides to look around at the back, and Alec stays in the car. When she's back there, she finds a wallet and a cell phone near an old campfire. Even though there's a human skull nearby, she finishes what she's doing without realizing it. As they continue their journey, they spot a woman standing in the middle of the road. Alec stops the car and inquiries about the trouble with her vehicle. Uncertain about why her car stopped, the woman accepts Alec's offer of help, and he goes to get cables. While waiting, Nora talks to the woman who abruptly asks about her ring. Nora, surprised by the question, says it's not the woman's concern. The situation escalates as they end up in an argument. Nora, upset, explains that they stopped to assist the woman, but woman replied by saying she didn't request their help. This frustrates Nora, makes her to tell Alec to get back in the car, and they leave the woman behind. Upon reaching the next stop, they opt for some food. The waitress compliments Nora, and while they eat, Alec senses they are being observed by a strange man. Nora dismisses Alec's concerns, attributing it to their status as newcomers in town. As they prepare to depart, the man abruptly seizes Nora's arm, warning them that it's not safe. This startles Nora, and Alec promptly steps in. They hurriedly exit, returning to their car. Alec, intrigued, questions Nora about the man's statement, but she downplays it. Subsequently, they reach a gas station and inquire about accommodations for the night. The attendant directs them to a nearby place where they can rent a cabin. After leaving the gas station, the attendant eyes them suspiciously. On the journey, Nora expresses her desire to inspect the place before committing to a stay. Upon arrival, Nora feels uneasy about the place, expressing her discomfort to Alec. He reassures her, pointing out the numerous cars as a sign of safety. Entering the building, Nora remains uncertain, but Alec directs her attention to the used plates on the table, suggesting the presence of other people inside. Exploring the building, they find it deserted. Heading upstairs, they encounter a man with a disfigured face. Though Nora is unimpressed, Alec leads the way. The landlord, with a history of renting to groups, guides them to their room. Mentioning the previous owner, Mrs. Anderson, who passed away 4 years ago, he shares details about his long ownership. Nora remains skeptical throughout the encounter. The man goes on talking, but Nora, feeling exhausted, asks him to leave them be. Offended, the man walks away. Alec scolds Nora for being rude, but she explains that the man's constant talking repulsed her. Unaware of the gruesome sight in the room, the couple, fatigued, eventually goes to sleep. While the couple sleeps, unbeknownst to them, a person emerges from under the bed, wearing a disturbing sheep mask. As the figure looms over them, Nora wakes up to a horrifying discovery. She's trapped in a cage. Despite her efforts, she struggles to break free. Abruptly, a man donning a goat mask appears and pounds on the cage, instructing her to stay quiet. Once he departs, Nora seizes a small rock, attempting to unlock the cage in desperation. Shortly after, another man, this time wearing a cow mask, appears, leaving Nora bewildered about the unfolding events. The man proceeds to pour an unknown liquid on her, and the screen fades to black. In the subsequent scene, Nora finds herself confined in a barn, bound by ropes with her legs wide open. A figure wearing a rabbit mask enters and administers an injection. Despite Nora's screams and struggles, her efforts prove futile. Filled with terror, she questions the man about what he has subjected her to. The man departs without uttering a word. Later, the same two men return and release Nora from her restraints. They lift her and place her back inside the cage. Exhausted and unable to resist, Nora is then confined in a cage and transported to another location. During this journey, she observes an entire community of people adorned in animal masks engaged in various activities. Nora is eventually deposited in a stable, harboring deep concerns about the impending events she may face. Next, all the captured men, including Alec, were put in tiny cages. Alec woke up with something covering his mouth, and when he tried to scream, nothing came out. He saw the other men sitting quietly. Then, 3 guys walked in and started hitting one of the men with a hammer. They did the same to another guy, and Alec was horrified watching it all happen. Alec, feeling desperate and frightened, started shaking the cage uncontrollably. The men, disturbed by the noise, approached him. When Alec attempted to resist, they hit him with a hammer, rendering him unconscious. The men then loaded all of them into a trolley and transported them to a slaughterhouse. In the following scene, a man wearing a pig mask received a plastic bag containing human limbs. He casually strolled through town, eventually waving to another man who was waiting for him. The man with the pig mask placed the bag inside his office. The man with the pig mask proceeded to the waiting man, and together, they extracted a cage containing another captive from his car. They then transferred the captive to the stables. Subsequently, the man with the pig mask headed to meet someone. It is unveiled that the man with the disfigured face is the man in charge. He informed the man with the pig mask that they must prepare food for 80 people within 3 hours, emphasizing the urgency due to a looming deadline. Following this, the man in charge forcefully entered the kitchen, instructing the workers to expedite the food preparation. He received a call from a customer, realizing they would arrive early to collect the food. Turning to the man with the pig mask, he suggested using dairy livestock due to a shortage of meat. The subsequent scene reveals lactating women confined in cages with suction tubes attached to their bosoms. The man with the pig mask is then seen extracting a baby from one of the women. Andrew, the man from the gas station, sits down to console the grieving mother, but she begins cursing at him. It becomes apparent that the farm is being utilized to impregnate humans for the purpose of producing milk and meat. Abruptly, the men are summoned to the stables. Upon arrival, they discover one of the women dead, with a piece of wood in her chest, bearing Andrew's name. The leader issues orders for the men to locate him. Meanwhile, Nora hears someone coughing. Upon investigation, she finds a woman in the neighboring stall who has been confined there for 2 years. The woman reveals that she was impregnated for the purpose of producing milk, and the farmers treat humans as if they were farm animals. After numerous miscarriages, she is no longer able to conceive. As she explains the impossibility of escape to Nora, another woman in a nearby stall begins to cry. The girl, named Ashley, reveals that she was captured 2 weeks ago. Expressing her fear and uncertainty about survival, Nora attempts to reassure her, promising that they will escape together. However, the leader instructs his men to dispose of the woman who can no longer produce milk. In the stall next to Nora's, they untie the woman and carry out the grim task. Watching this unfold, Nora becomes terrified for her own life and sinks down to the floor in fear. When someone enters her stall, Nora is initially terrified, fearing the worst. However, to her surprise, it's Alec who has come to try and rescue her. He urges her that they must leave immediately if they want any chance of escaping. Moving swiftly, they make their way out of the stables, attempting to avoid being seen. Coming across a truck, Nora tries to start it, but one of the men hears, prompting them to make a run for it. Hiding with the injured Alec, they manage to evade the pursuer, who leaves upon hearing a bell. Nora and Alec persist in their quest to escape and come across a church, hoping to find someone who can assist them. Inside, they discover a mural on the wall depicting Jesus and his followers, but with their faces replaced by animals, like those on the farm. Nora secures a sharp object, while Alec spots a man with a cow mask, prompting them to hide just before he enters the church. As he sits there praying, Nora and Alec decide to attempt an escape. However, as they leave, the floorboards creak, catching the man's attention. He swiftly gets up, ringing the bell to alert everyone on the farm. While running through a field, Alec is ensnared in a bear trap. In her attempt to free him, Nora notices approaching men and, with no alternative, is compelled to leave him behind. Distraught, Nora glances back and witnesses the masked group mercilessly dropping a massive rock on Alec's head. Overwhelmed by grief, she breaks into tears upon hearing the crushing of Alec's skull. Devastated but left with no alternative, Nora continues to run for her own survival. Seeking refuge, she hides inside some stables. There, she encounters a man confined in a cage, imploring him for guidance on how to escape. The man informs her about a bus used by the masked individuals for transportation and directs her to find the keys in the office. Desperately fleeing for her life, Nora exits the stables. Oddly, Andrew and the leader observe her running, but rather than pursuing her, exchange a sinister smile. Nora cautiously navigates the farm, spotting a masked man driving a car. Deciding to pursue him, she grabs a hammer from the gas station. As the masked man exits the vehicle, Nora strikes him over the head, swiftly ending his threat. With a shock, Nora notices the rest of the group of men rushing toward her. Hastily, she gets into the car and attempts to start it. Just as the men are closing in on her, she successfully drives off, leaving them behind. Relief washes over her as she glimpses the man in the rearview mirror. However, her joy is fleeting. The engine suddenly cuts out, forcing her to continue on foot. Nora sprints for her life, but the masked men are closing the distance. Deciding to take refuge in a building, Nora hurries to the basement. Spotting a window, she frantically attempts to open it. The men make a grab for her, but she somehow escapes. Just as she's about to pull herself up, one of the men seizes her foot. Using the sharp object she has, she stabs the man in the hand, freeing herself. Nora pulls herself up and spots the bus the man mentioned. Realizing the stables where Ashley was held captive are nearby, she resolves to go and rescue her. Discovering Ashley, Nora urges her to come along. Terrified, Ashley expresses her reluctance to leave, but Nora insists, pulling her onto the bus. Nora starts the engine, relieved that they've escaped. However, her joy is short-lived as she notices Ashley staring in silence. Looking back, Nora realizes she has fallen into a trap. The bus is full of masked men, and her fate is sealed. The movie concludes with the masked men presenting Nora and Ashley to the village, apples in their mouths.